Hello rail fans. Today we're going to be checking out some awesome culverts along this former B&M, Boston and Maine railroad track. There's some awesome granite and cast iron culverts I want to check out along this today. This train track was abandoned years ago, but reopened as a seasonal train track, which doubles as a snowmobile trail in the wintertime. Alright, here's a pretty old one. You can see all the current coming out of this drainage ditch. See the buildup of debris. But this culvert is so big, it's pretty difficult to clog this, especially with the very violent freeze and thaw cycles we have around here. Okay, we can see all the way through. No bears. So we're going to take a look inside. Not a single piece of mortar, but yet 150 years later, it's still here. Not a clog, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. They really knew how to build these back in the day. Look what I'm realizing here. See how the entrance starts really big, but it gets smaller and smaller as it goes through? That may just be a coincidence, but it also may be so it allows a huge amount of water in, and the engineers know as water speeds up and goes faster, it can fit through a smaller space. See how all these debris is hung up here? They got to do something about this before it causes a bigger problem. The way this debris is all wound up here. There's supposed to be a dugout ditch right here, going down to a culvert pipe right here. This ditch has filled in from years of neglect, and erosion from upstream is leaving silt deposits here, filling it in. This is like a simple half-an-hour job, digging this drainage ditch out with a track excavator. Very easy. It's no cause for concern yet, but as you see the debris on the inside of the rail, this water torrent was definitely high enough to put this underwater. It's all being collected up here, coming off this hill. We got another one here. You see how this can happen. All these leaves all get dragged down here during a severe storm, and it would easily clog up the culvert pipe. Just a few sticks in the way will cause a major problem. Like you're seeing right here, all the leaves can simply just pass through the pipe, but you just get a couple sticks like this involved, throw that out of the way. There's actually only one. Check out what we have here. There's an iron pipe, probably 2 inches thick in diameter. That thing will be lasting hundreds of years. It's likely 150 years old already, and there's not a sign of damage to it. It's just so thick, probably be there in 1,000 years. Check it out. There's a culvert pipe right here. You don't see it, do you? It's completely clogged, and just by the way the leaves are pushed onto it, it's plugged to the extent I don't even think I can unclog this. And as this culvert's backing up, you see it's flooding. This flood caused by the clogged culvert was all the way up to these railroad tracks and going down to the next culvert right here. This is all the edge of where the water was. This entire pit was filled. Let's see if we can find the pipe on the other side. Look at that. Signs of the past. An old telegraph pole. Here we are on the other side. A really nice cast iron culvert. And you see cast iron's not strong at all. Look at that. At the end of it just shattered and broke from the freeze and thaw cycles. But that is still one of the best culverts you can possibly put in. That looks like 1/2-inch steel. It'll be around hundreds of years. Looking down at the evidence, water's definitely hitting here. Some of it's passing through. But by looking at the riverbed, this thing has not run at full capacity in a very long time. Now that I know what size pipe I'm dealing with, just want to feel around. Dig around a little bit. Okay, there's the top of it there. And now I'm not even going to touch this. And I'm going to tell you why. It's absolutely pointless. See the debris here in this channel where it all comes flowing down? And look at the debris right here. Unclogging that would do absolutely nothing. There's just so much debris around it. It's all got to be cleaned out professionally by an excavator. Me doing that would do absolutely nothing. Next big storm, it'll plug it and do the same thing almost immediately. But this is where the water's going, down to the next culvert. Back when the system was designed, it was designed for failure. Like, not in a bad way, in a good way. When that one clogs up, it was originally designed to have a drainage ditch simply go on to the next one so that it wouldn't flood over the track. But years of neglect, there's not really much of a drainage ditch anymore. But as you can see by the debris evidence, it did still come down here as originally designed, which is a good thing. And this one is not clogged up because it's not a tiny little pipe. A wall of leaves is not capable of clogging a culvert this big. Oh, wow. That is like the steepest culvert I've ever seen. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this is a steep, like 40-degree angle going right into there. We've got to explore this. Alrighty, going down at a pretty steep angle with slippery rocks. Gotta go in carefully to check this out. Alright, got a little bit of debris in here hung up on rocks, but for 150 years old, this thing is in perfect condition, and the reason it's so steep is because less effort. This is natural bedrock, the foundation or the floor of it. And the steep angle actually helps water get out of here efficiently. The steep angle stops it from clogging. The little walls of debris you see in there will simply be smashed out of the way by the spring thaw. Yeah, we can't go out the other end, because the other end is like half the height. I'm noticing a trend around here. Every culvert entrance is a lot bigger than the exit, and they do that for the water dynamics. The faster the water gets moving, the smaller space it needs. So there's no need to build a culvert exit the same size as the entrance. And if some debris was to get stuck in there, so much pressure would be applied that it obviously just snaps out of the way. So everyone, these train tracks here are only used once a day by a seasonal train for tourists just to see the landscape. And there are some culvert pipes, such as right here, which are completely jammed up because they're just undersized. And you can see this entire area would fill up with feet of water as it tumbles down the drainage ditch to the next one. By the evidence here, lots of water is moving actually down this way towards that clog, so it would be going even further. Because it looks like there's another clogged one just up here. That's one mistake they made years ago, putting a bunch of undersized cast iron culverts that'll virtually last forever, but they clog pretty easily. But today we're mostly exploring their granite box culverts, which are all in absolutely perfect condition, and they're virtually clog-proof. Right here we have a granite box culvert, which is kind of small compared to the others, but it's still in great condition and not a single clog. And just look at that steep angle in there. If I was to step in there, I'd probably slip right down to the end. Probably a good, at least 30-degree angle. That's the exit of a really old cast iron culvert. And those are pretty brittle structures. The end of it's all shattered from the freeze and thaw. but the part in the ground is perfectly fine. And we're gonna see if we can unclog this one. This one actually looks like it'll stay unclogged for a while. Just by opening up the top of it, I can already tell this is clogged by neglect. At first when I saw it, you see all the leaves here. I was thinking one good storm could have just come down here and plugged it up, but that's not the case at all. You go in here, I got the top half of it open, and look at that. That's a cast iron pipe, probably 2 inches thick. It's amazing. Just amazing how thick that is. It'll be here probably 1,000 years. It's already 150 with minor damage on the exiting end, which does not matter. But anyways, this is neglect. Everything on the bottom is dirt and beginning to rot. That amount of rot and decay is between 5 and 10 years old. And I don't know what I would find if I dug another foot. To me, this thing looks like it was neglected for maybe 2 or 3 decades. And that's what my conclusion is from just digging a little bit. At first I thought, maybe I'm going to give this train company the benefit of the doubt. That maybe a big storm just did this. Because that's a pretty steep angle. It can really catch debris and maybe plug that fast. But no. That's a neglect clog. Another granite box culvert. They'll last hundreds of years without even any maintenance. Look at that. Looks like it's fully open and ready to accept water. There's some minor debris on the floor, but that's barely anything compared to this thing's capacity. Oh, wow. This thing is actually huge. It's like a coal mine. That's what it reminds me of, because you see how steep it goes? That's a good 35-degree angle or so. But look at the exit. You don't see sunlight, do you? Here we are on the exiting end. How bad is it? We couldn't see daylight at all. Good news, everyone. It's not a clog. By design, it's like the others. The entrance is smaller, but that was not a clog. We couldn't see daylight because it goes down that sheer 35-40 degree angle. Then it hits a bend and comes out flat. As you can see, there's no clog. Just a little bit of debris on the floor caught between the rocks, which is actually great. There's no issue with this culvert. It's operating perfectly. BS Company, Lackawanna, Ohio, 1931. These are some pretty old rails, and they're still in great condition. As you can see, they're replacing ties as it needs to be done. They're in great condition. And you can see the rail is a little bit shiny. One train will pass on this per day, along with a few maintenance vehicles. This is a former passenger route, but in the 1950s, as the automobile became more popular, it was abandoned for quite some time. But a historical society decided to purchase this, and now it's used for seasonal train rides in the summer months. In the winter months, it's open to skiers and snowmobilers. Wintertime, this becomes a snowmobile trail. And we have another granite box, completely cleared all the way through. You see a little bit of debris here on the end, but through there you can see the floor. So the entrance is open more than its actual capacity through the center of it. This is some of the stuff I love about northern New England. Up here, old train tracks either become snowmobile ATV trails, or some of them that are lucky become like this, rescued to remain train tracks for tourists to ride on. It's awesome. None of them pave bike trails, which I think are actually pretty ugly unless they're actually in a city and they have a commuting purpose. Out here, nobody wants to just walk. There's hiking trails everywhere, so they become snowmobile trails, and they'll be pretty packed in the summertime. Even this one here doubles as a snowmobile trail as soon as the snow becomes deep enough to cover the rails. It looks like here, later on in the game, the railroad company had an issue, and there was no former old quality culvert. So they put a modern corrugated one in, which is still in perfect condition, except for the big blockage on the end of it, right here. It's still handling water, but we can open that up a little bit. Our usual culprit, one log going across, caused all the leaves to build up, when ordinarily leaves would just be able to pass through. There's also quite a bunch of ballast in there too. I looked in a second time because I was like, what's on the ceiling? There's a bunch of points. They use big sheet metal screws to connect the sections, which I guess isn't a bad idea. At least they use stainless steel ones. They're not rusty. Yeah, you see the sheet metal screws in there? A little bit of debris in the bottom of the pipe, but that'll be pushed out next time. Debris cannot build up inside a smooth pipe. It'll get pushed out next time when the proper amount of current is able to go through. People always ask me, why do I use gloves on certain jobs and ones not on others? First of all, this is a railroad culvert. There could be any amount of rusted metal, nails, sharp sheet metal, anything clogged in there that could easily cut you if you grab it. Public streets, there could be needles, any amount of debris. So that's why I'll typically use my feet, or if it's a big clog, I'll do the effort and get the rake out. But then when you see me unclogging by hand, the majority of the time, it's a culvert that's like 50, 70 miles away from the nearest civilization, and they're operated by logging companies. The chances of getting stuck by a needle out there are close to none. First of all, the only people that would be using needles out there is probably a diabetic or somebody. Other than that, they wouldn't be like heroin needles, because any addict wants to stay close to their dealer. You think they're just gonna randomly be 70 miles deep on a dirt road away from the nearest person? Highly unlikely to find any kind of sharp debris like that out there. But I don't go on in at full speed. I go carefully as I feel around the clog. Okay, down here I see an exiting end of a culvert. Now over here on this end, look what's blocking it. It's likely at least 3 feet beneath that pile of debris. And it's completely jammed because you can see the current is bringing it down to this culvert right here. And what do we got for a culvert? I don't even see where it is. This one's completely jammed up too. Yeah, that totally makes sense. The one down there is blocked, so it's going here. This one's completely blocked, meaning this entire gully fills up with water. Then you see the sediment. It crosses the street right here. You can see all this erosion here. Then it goes down here into this gully and gets pushed through this little bridge. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. They line the bottom with those giant blocks. I love that. It looks so nice. The engineers of the past certainly knew what they were doing. It's just these days, this being a privately owned train track, they certainly just do not have the funding to do this. But because of the genius engineers of the past, it honestly doesn't matter. Culvert way down there is blocked. It goes to this one, which is blocked. It fills the gully, goes over the road, comes down here, and goes under the bridge. Even after all that neglect, it still does not wash out the tracks because of genius engineering and proper drainage systems. Like I said, this trail is open to skiers and snowmobilers in the wintertime. People in one of my older videos criticized me because I said these holes are from people's spikes on their shoes and snowmobiles, and they're like, no, they're not. That's from the treating process of the wood. It's not. This is actually from a snowmobiler. Notice how they're all round. That's from the spikes on snowmobiler tracks. Now these marks are from the process of adding the preservative to the wood. You can see there's a clear difference. Underneath this really nice bridge foundation, check it out. At one time there must have been erosion damage because they had to add some concrete. The rock wall is definitely still behind that, but it must have suffered some damage. You see they put metal screening over it to add the concrete. Now this is really cool, this floor. Love it. This would be a great place on a hot day to hang out. And what do we have here? Does anybody know what this is? No idea what that thing is for. But check this out. This is pretty cool. Look, they're being held together. They actually tied all these giant blocks together so they couldn't erode away. A lot of the ties have completely broken away, but a few of them still remain. You can see how they broke away. You see how this is all worn down, smashed, almost flat? During a storm, rocks are tumbling over this, especially in the middle here. That's why they're missing. They just get slammed by rocks rolling down here during torrential storms. These are in great condition because they're being protected by this. But if we walk up here, almost every single one in the line of fire is completely crushed, cracked, and destroyed. But it doesn't seem to matter. There's not much erosion here. The ones up top are in perfect condition because they don't get hit by rolling boulders. The majority of the rails are from the 1930s. The majority of the ties are from the 50s and 60s, as indicated by these nails that back in the day they would pound in so they know how old they are. Most of the railroad plates I'm seeing range from the 50s through the 70s, depending where you look. What does everyone think? This mark goes through every older tie. The ones they replaced don't have it, but all the older ties all have that mark. You think there was something sitting on the track that the train hit and was like boom, 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 smashing through them all? Because you see, it all starts deep on this end and it gets more shallow, like it was being pushed in this direction. Train tracks in a city will have color-coded ties. None of them out here have that. Usually on a modern railroad, they'll have white painted ties, which mean culvert, blue ones that mean water main, yellow ones that mean gas, green ones that mean sewer line passes underneath. Obviously around here we don't have any of that stuff because it's out in the country. Everyone has their own private utilities. We actually came across some water here going into this culvert, which is in good condition. It's got a little wall right there holding up a little pool, but no effect on the culvert. A little surprised to see trickling water out here today. That wasn't going underneath one of the bridges, because here in Maine, we do have technically a water shortage as far as dry weather, although it's been raining like crazy. It's because we're still behind from last year on rainfall. Massachusetts, along with southern New England, is completely out of the drought with record rainfall, but up here it's not happening. What is all over the train tracks up here? Turkeys? Yep, turkeys. You gotta watch out for turkeys sometimes. They can be very unpredictable. I've had really friendly ones that people must have been feeding come up to me looking for food. I've had other ones come up and start pecking away at the front of the vehicle trying to attack. But the majority of them, like these, will simply just walk away, not wanting the trouble. Once again, I love these old granite box culverts. You can see all the debris in the channel coming down here, but yet there's no blockage because they were built for everything to pass on through. This one is also in perfect condition and clear. Every culvert out here I've come across is in absolutely perfect condition. The big granite box culverts, which are meant for debris to pass, every single one so far is completely unclogged. A few of the cast iron ones, they're in a perfect condition. They just have a small clog because they're not meant to go so long without maintenance. Every culvert I've showed in this video is over 100 years old, and they're in great condition. Why is that? Because back then, they used the highest quality materials. Today, almost any modern one you look at won't last nearly as long. It's just a factor of not having enough money to do it. Got some trickling water coming out of a really nice cast iron culvert, but like all the other cast iron culverts we've seen today, massive blockage on the end of it. It's allowing water to pass through for the most part. Let's see if we can even dig down to it. We'll give it an attempt. I found the culprit of the clog. And it's been like this for years, based on this decay of the leaves. If I can lift it. Ugh. Look at that. Oh, worked better than I thought. This channel right to the culvert. Water's starting to trickle it. Just got to get this thing out. Weighs a ton. Ooh. Big heavy rock. This stick is the culprit of causing this whole clog. Based on the rotten evidence, it's about 5 years old. As you can see, we probably got 90% of it open, and that'll make a good improvement for the next time it rains. Because by the evidence, that can't fully handle it. You can see some evidence it's been going down to the next culvert. That will actually improve the way I left it during the next high flow. I'm very excited to see what's underneath this portion of tracks, because the bed of this river is so huge. This is one big riverbed. This is the kind of riverbed it only starts flowing when there's a flash flood or during the spring thaw. Most of the year, you won't see anything. But yet, the culvert, after all these years, not a single clog on it. Because when this thing gets raging, anything that would be blocking that would get just absolutely folded in half. Any clog would be obliterated by the force of the water. Some nice bright orange mushrooms. Now we got to go inside this culvert. This one's actually very suitable for walking. Got a piece of train rail down here. Such a beautiful culvert. And this one will be here even in 100 years. Still be here. So you can see they didn't put it together with mortar at all. But yet it's still perfect. I see a couple black widows in here, but other than that, it's nice. It's got about 7-foot ceilings. And between the bigger blocks, they plug the holes with smaller rocks so dirt can't wash through during high flow. There's the big black widow guarding a egg sac. Now we're walking through. Really nice floor, the way they packed all the rocks together. Now we're coming out the discharge. Right here we have a beneficial clog, and I'm going to explain why. You see it's holding up a pool of water. It's not stagnant by any means. I see ripples going through it, so it's not a mosquito risk. And it's all groundwater. You see, there's no trickle coming down that hill. Now as it enters this really heavy-duty cast iron culvert, there's a small blockage in front of it. It's not blocking the diameter of the pipe. It's just holding back the water a little bit so it can trickle down easily. If this blockage was removed, it would likely increase the flow upstream, possibly dragging even more leaves into it. So that's why this one's just best to leave. Years ago, train companies were just allowed to dump their creosote-soaked railroad ties after their service life. They'd just leave them on the side, allowing them to rot. Years ago, this entire area was covered in them, but the state is slowly making the railway clean it up because creosote has unknown effects on the environment. It's never really been studied. But other railways like CSX has not done that in a very long time, but along some of their lines, you can still find massive piles of that stuff. What do you guys think this is? The new ties don't have it, but all the old ones have this mark. Like the train, for a very long time, was dragging something every single day as it would go by. Right here we have hiking crossing, and this drainage ditch looks like it's naturally eroded deeper than it originally was. This is where the hikers would cross. Pretty dangerous now, but that used to be some nice stairs. A lot of people ask me where I get my boots. They come from eBay for just under 40 bucks. I'll leave a link in the description for them. There's 3 variations which are the same price for whatever reason. The variation I have is steel toe, which is great for hiking. And also, a lot of people, when I climb Mount Washington in these kind of boots, were like, how did you not get blisters from that? Well, that hike I had 2 pairs of socks. Only have 1 right now, but the walls of this are really thin, so it doesn't like hurt your ankles or anything. And it's pretty durable when they're new. What I mean by that is after the boot becomes about a year or two old, the rubber becomes naturally brittle, and you're gonna start getting a splice right here, and they won't be waterproof anymore. But they're still useful for hiking after that. The other variations are no steel toe, and the toughest ones are steel toe and steel sole. Steel sole are horrible if you're hiking because you want your sole to be able to move. Those kind of boots I use when I'm going somewhere where there might be hidden nails and stuff you might step on. But these boots have held up quite well. Look at this rough stuff I walk on. The other ones, before that split started happening, I literally wore them out. The tread was almost completely gone. But as the rubber became more brittle, it's just like tires on your car. Don't get high mileage tires unless you plan on wearing them out. Because regardless, after 3 years, you're gonna start getting dry rot. So only get the mileage range tires that you're gonna use. If you plan on driving 60,000 miles, get high mileage tires. If you're somebody who only drives 5,000 miles a year, it's just a waste of money because after 3 years, they're probably not gonna be safe for the highway anyways. Today's not a hot day, but we have overcast and 73% humidity, so it's kind of miserable today. I just walked about 3 miles. On my way back, my clothes are soaked because I'm wearing a backpack. Sweating a lot. Hope this video was interesting. Thanks for watching.